Is it on? Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, I call to order Millersville Board of Commissioners work session Monday, April 2nd, 2018 at 5:03 PM. First item, discuss plan of action regarding personnel during the interim period. Anybody? That's the sheet she just gave you.
Yeah, sorry.
Have you been able to get a temporary help, looking at that?
A temporary,
Just somebody temporarily help you?
the only thing that I'm able to do right now is just have Deborah help me. Michael's gonna help. So, and then whatever I take Deborah away from, Amy's gonna step in and help up front, so.
So we're not looking at hiring temporary help?
We didn't the last time, the last time
Okay.
that Holly was
just
interim.
asking. I'm not saying that it's necessary, but I'm just.
It all worked out pretty well.
Okay.
And I think this time, it even has a better chance, because at least she's getting rid of some of the,
Workload.
like Michael would be attending all the MPO meetings, anything
I like that idea.
outside of.
And he's gonna follow up and be our liaison for all of the grants and projects we got going on right now. So he's gonna, and then he's gonna also act as the liaison between OHM,
Okay.
who's, in contact with, I guess, TDOT, with the Old Shiloh Bridge, the sidewalk project that's ongoing, the sewer improvement project that's going on, so, and City Hall improvement, so.
And most of it, if they do it in a lump sum, it's like a bonus at the end, most of it will happen in the next fiscal year's budget, which if it, depending on how long it takes to find the city manager, if it goes 5 or 6 months, the fact that we're not paying a city manager
Right.
will offset the cost.
Right. Yeah, the difference for that period of time is what, $18,000, almost $19,000 in savings.
Well, and not only that, let's say if it took 6 months, you would have half of whatever 38,000 is, plus you don't have to pay the insurance on that city manager
Right.
as well, so that's,
No, it's actually, the 38 is the 6 months. Her salary was 77,800 something.
right, but
So-
we're gonna pay half of that, is what I'm saying. We gotta pay her half of that 38.
Right, which is in this fiscal year.
Yes.
Yeah, so by pushing the others into the next fiscal year, it will offset not having the city
Yeah.
manager.
But
and
again, what the
paying.
mayor's pointing out is we're also going to have a reduction in costs.
Yeah, right,
At the end of the
yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
three-month period.
yeah.
Because
Yeah,
of
but
the
for
rate of
three of them months, we're gonna be paying the city manager also.
Exactly, that's why I'm saying, if it takes 6 months to find a city manager, you'll save 19,500 roughly. Plus, whatever the cost of her insurance is for 3 months.
Right, for July, August, and September.
Which should get it close to that
Mhm.
$20,000.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't, and I don't know how long it took to find a city manager last time. Do you?
It was
4.5, 5 months?
four, yeah.
That'd be
yeah,
say between 4 and 6 months.
Yeah, it was, so,
I am of the belief that when we start interviewing this time, and we talk about it with Gary when he gets here, there probably needs to be a minimum of at least 2 interviews.
Oh, yeah,
uh,
2 or 3.
in person.
Yeah.
So, and also maybe have the department heads sit in on the first one. That way, if they see any questions that they would like asked, that,
According to Gary, I talked to him up there this week, Gary Jekyll, up there at the meeting, and I asked him about that. He said they can sit in here, but they can't speak,
right,
but they can give us questions.
After
Maybe
the
on the
meeting,
second
yeah.
time we talked. that we can ask for those.
Exactly.
Holly come up with that idea, and I thought it was a really good idea.
Well, I think, you know, if you hire somebody right off the bat that some of the department heads feel like they may conflict with, you're in the hole when you start out.
Yep.
Or if there's something that they'd just like to be asked that we don't think about. So.
Well, it also gets the department heads, you know, being involved with the process, and they can, you know, see, you know, everyone that's being interviewed. And they were they really like the idea of just being able to sit in.
It's a good idea.
Would the department heads be able to, they'd have to run it through us, but I'm sure they'll have instances or examples that they would like to know any candidate, how they would react to it, or
Probably.
I think that Gary did a good job of leading the interview process before, and he had a lot of questions, you know, that were already in a form to ask. And, but I did this a long time ago. I don't know who else sat in on the city manager interviews, and basically we just sat back there, didn't say a word, but after it was over, the commission asked our input. And we provided input, you know, on each candidate, you know, and that's basically all we did. But we were able to be present, which it means a lot to them. And like I said, they like the idea.
Anybody have any questions about the interim?
is Holly worth the additional money?
I would argue yes. Because if she doesn't do it, who else are you gonna get for $13 an hour?
Nobody.
It's actually less than what I did it for the last time.
And I'll say this, she's not gonna,
Yeah.
she's not gonna do this and be out of here at 5 o'clock every day. She's gonna be here a lot more hours than 5 o'clock.
I'm wondering how much interference that new grandbaby will have. Considerable.
I will ask, there's no action on the agenda for tonight. I don't know if this needs to be voted on.
Probably.
So I guess it would go to the April meeting. So we just put it on the agenda to vote.
Is all of it lump sum at the end?
All of it except for Brandon. I'd like to go ahead and make his effective immediately. Because right now Josh has no one else to answer to. And he,
Well, I believe she has the authority to do that on her own.
Is interim.
I mean, she's not creating a position,
yeah.
and,
It's just that he answered to the previous city manager, but it wouldn't do him no good to answer to me because I can't help him. Brandon's the only one that can lead and guide him right now, and that would be my opinion would be that he should be compensated for taking the time to help, you know, train and manage him until we hire a building
so it'll
inspector.
actually be.
We had building inspector.
We don't.
We have a per call. inspector.
Contracted, he's contracted out, but his job is not in here. He doesn't come in here to do anything. He's outside
This has
inspector.
nothing to do with building inspector.
Okay.
The only thing that it even has to do with building at all is the fact that Josh issues the permit. Does the clerical part of issuing a permit.
But it's our assumption that Josh will answer to that position if we get a full-time building inspector, that's who Josh would
Yes.
work alongside and answer to.
Are we looking for somebody right now? Like the certified building official? Is that going to be considered part-time, full-time?
Well, right now, we do not have a stormwater manager, and we do not have a certified building official other than contracted out, so.
Yes.
But we do have somebody contracted out for that.
Right, but we
So
need someone to do the
Yeah,
stormwater manager and the building inspection, so we're thinking to combine the two, and we're gonna have to hire somebody.
You're going to be
We
hiring?
have to have a stormwater.
We do.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have nobody.
That's right.
Well, I mean, right now, we're paying OHM to produce all of
That gets
the
expensive.
documents.
That's costly.
So if we can combine, if we can find someone who's a certified inspector already, who's willing to do the stormwater,
And Josh
Side
would
of
answer
it.
to that person.
Yes,
as-
yes.
as coaches.
Do we not get Gary to help us, Gary Jeff will help us find somebody, or what do y'all think on that? 'Cause
Yeah, he will.
that's
They
what I
probably
mean.
will, but it's probably somebody we're gonna find local. We can advertise, we just need to put together an ad
Are
and
we
maybe
doing that?
the job description.
Are we doing that now?
We haven't done anything
We
yet,
haven't
but,
passed it yet.
Okay. No, but there's a lot going on, I
Yeah.
know, so.
yeah.
Maybe I'll do
Basically,
that
she's
sometime.
gonna have to have a position to fill,
Mhm.
and it's gonna have to be building inspector / stormwater director.
Will that be two qualifications for one person, or are you looking for two people with separate classifications?
Same person.
One person, okay.
I don't believe we have enough for a full-time stormwater director, nor do I think we have enough for a full-time building inspector.
Okay.
Their credentials, how do their credentials differ? Do we know?
They should, well, pretty much anybody can be the stormwater director. You may have to have classes on how to inspect stormwater, but that goes hand in hand with construction.
Right.
Because that's where most of it's at. As far as doing he'll just have to have some kind of ability to produce reports. Karen Smith used to do the reports for the stormwater.
Do we have a software program that produces those reports, or is it something that Ms. Smith put together?
OHM is doing the MS4 report right now, and that's what Karen did.
Yeah, and I think that document you can get online, but it's lengthy.
It's like 50 pages, it's very lengthy.
How often do we have to submit?
Every
that?
year.
Every year.
Mhm.
And the way Karen explained it to me was, she had it, and she used the same report, it's just things that changed. She went in and changed whatever changed inside of it.
Have we had any of those stormwater reports produced since Karen?
Yeah, OHM's doing it.
OHM.
OHM is handling that, but they're not our stormwater manager.
Okay.
They are only preparing the
So
report.
they're just doing the report?
And right now, we actually have a couple stormwater violations going on right now, and Michael's handling that, and that wasn't actually part of his job, but he had some experience in it, so he's handling that issue with the state's help, I believe. So,
Anybody got anything else?
That sounds good.
Yep.
All right. Resolution 18-R-2, repeal and replace Resolution 15-R-04, take-home vehicle policy.
I apologize, when this was copied, I didn't realize it had my notes on it, and I think that's the part that you wanted to change to the wording of a committee.
That was the suggestion from Mark, that rather than one person reviewing an accident, maybe 3 department heads review and then send it to the city manager for approval. And it would make most sense that be the fire chief, police chief, and public works director, seeing how they're the ones driving the vehicle. For that, then those departments. Some of them are front and back.
That's front and back.
Yes. Which page you missing?
There's notes on 3 and 4. Page
Oh,
3
no, I
and 4.
only have 2 pages.
Mine's front and back.
Is
Mine's
it?
front and back.
Okay.
You need to borrow mine?
Well, I had the page that I was going to reference. What I would like to do is I would like to ask a question about the section 2 on the additional allowance. Police chief, fire chief, police lieutenant, and assistant fire chief. I talked to Mark Palmer the other day, and also Dustin. Dustin is currently the police lieutenant, but he, I think several people refer to him as the assistant police chief because that's basically what he's doing. And he really needs to order uniforms, and because he's lost so much weight, and so he's got to order new uniforms. And I would like to make the recommendation, if at all possible, we can go ahead and name him as the assistant police chief and change that wording in this resolution when you adopt it on the April 17th meeting.
I don't know.
Have we ever had an assistant police chief?
No.
But the police lieutenant has been the acting assistant all this time. I don't have a
So
problem.
that'd be creating another position, correct?
Actually, it'll be creating a position and then getting rid of a position.
So you're gonna get rid of the lieutenant?
Yes, there will be no lieutenant.
Would we still want to keep the
Well, you may
position?
keep
We
the
just wouldn't
position,
fill
it just wouldn't be
Right.
filled.
Yeah. But it's my understanding that, though, when looking at the pay scale, his pay range is still going to be the same. It's not going to change. He will still have the same pay range, the step
The
plan.
duties are the same,
Right,
it's just title only.
yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know why you'd have a fire chief and an assistant fire chief and then have a police chief and a lieutenant.
Right, and that's what I was, and that's the reason why it was brought up, is we do have an assistant fire chief and a fire chief. We have a police chief, but no assistant police chief. And everyone knows that that has been Dustin's, fell within his responsibilities since Mark was promoted to the police chief, that Dustin does assist in every way possible.
It's just a change in name, isn't it? Title,
Yeah.
just title change. No money.
So we'll have to create the position just by adding that position, and then with the compensation plan, it'll be the same as the lieutenant.
Okay.
And I personally would like to see him get a little bit more compensation for,
He is one of the ones that is underpaid per.
he is,
Yeah, we already know he's under 17.
yeah. So,
Why do we have a police lieutenant but no police captain?
we just haven't had a captain position in a while.
Mark was the last
Yeah, the
captain
last
that we had.
captain.
Do we still have that position sitting there but unfilled, or?
I don't think it was in that compensation plan, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and name them assistant police chief. Makes sense. As far as compensation, I guess we'll have to bring that up at the end of this fiscal year.
Yeah, I would say.
If Holly or the new city manager will bring that up again at that time.
Okay.
Is that the only one we need to bring up, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I don't know.
I think there's some others, too.
There's a few that's below step one.
Okay.
Holly's one of them.
Can I, though, when we do the creation of the position on the April meeting, can we propose a small increase, though, and that be included in the compensation plan for his job description?
You talked about
For Dustin?
Dustin.
Yeah.
Have we approved that compensation plan yet?
Well, you did in
You did.
the original resolution, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
But we don't have that position.
Within that compensation plan, what was the range of the police lieutenant?
I think it's the same as what an assistant police chief would be, and I know Dustin is 17%
Under.
step one.
Step one.
So.
So he's already way under.
It sounds to me like we're gonna have to revise the compensation plan to put in assistant police chief, and perhaps put that at the same compensation level as police lieutenant.
Mhm. That's what I would recommend
And
doing.
at that point, I guess this board needs to consider whether or not at this time, since she's taking on those responsibilities, if she should have an increase, what would your recommendation be?
On the pay.
Yeah.
Um,
Or you want to give it to us later?
I can, but I'd already looked at, and even if we went halfway, we still wouldn't get him to step one.
As a police lieutenant, we wouldn't get it.
Right,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
Even if it was half, and it seems like it was $1 and something an hour, wouldn't even get him to half. It was nearly half.
Yeah, I don't have a
So,
problem with that.
I can't remember the exact number. I don't know if he's $3 or $4 per hour away from step one. And Mark had even
He's
said
17.
himself,
He's
the percent
17%.
under, right.
So he would be, he'd be at least $3 under.
Yeah, I remember looking at it, I don't remember the exact number, but,
He's at least 3.
So you're asking us to get a police chief and leave the police lieutenant there, but just a title would not be filled for the police lieutenant. In other words, you want to leave that there, and does Mark want to leave it there? Are we taking the police lieutenant out when we do this, when we go to the police assistant chief?
I don't know why you would take it out.
Yeah,
It's already
I don't-
there. I mean,
yeah.
we're just not using it.
Just leave it in there just like it is?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it could be helpful later on.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I just want to get that in my mind, so
Right.
that's good. That'd work.
Has everybody read all these restrictions on the vehicle policy?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to come back again.
The only question I have is on if we're going to go ahead on the 3 committees. Are we still looking at the 3 committees?
Three-person
Yeah,
committee.
3-person, like you said, that has those 3
That's what Mark
departments.
thinks.
Is that going to be, when we vote, is that going to be included? Because
It
it's not
will.
included in here.
It will.
Okay. Do we need to go ahead, you think, Mr. Mayor, put that on the next regular meeting and get this rolling? or
If
what?
everybody's in agreement. Now, the only one that's on here, it says no civilian passengers allowed in the vehicle, i.e. family members. Is that going to be left in there? And I'm going to tell you why.
Well, I have,
The liability would be off base then.
yeah,
I'd rather just employ me in the car.
Okay, so there'll be
I
no more,
think there would be exceptions.
so there'll be no more ride-alongs with the police department.
You talk about as far as.
I'm talking about if you want to come up here and ride with the police chief around the city,
What if you had
It's not allowed.
no unauthorized
Well,
passengers?
no, that would be unauthorized, right.
no.
Instead of
Wouldn't it?
civilian
It
passengers?
says no civilian passengers allowed.
No, my would be no unauthorized passengers allowed in the vehicle.
Then that's going to lead me to another question.
Who
Okay.
authorizes
Who's going to
that?
authorize the
Well, I
people?
would say that the city manager or the chief of police.
That would be the only 2, yeah. I think
So-
Mark would.
And they signed a waiver, if I remember, that y'all had my daughter, when she
Because-
rode one afternoon, Karen had a waiver for her that we signed off.
Well, I mean, you got to think about everything on this. Because like when we have the parades, they call these fire trucks up.
You're right.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to bless that. Don't, they're in conflict with our policy.
I know like Leadership Sumner, one of the requirements, I don't know if they still do it, of Leadership Sumner is you have to ride along with, your local police department or sheriff's department. So there is that authorization. And the sheriff, I rode with the sheriff's department, and I got the blessings of the sheriff at that time that authorized me to ride with a deputy.
So I guess it would read as the police chief is authorized to allow people to ride with the police personnel. The fire chief would be able to authorize people to ride in the fire trucks.
I would think so.
The city manager's able to authorize people to ride in both.
Or public works.
Well, Public Works is another
Because
good
they'll be
one,
going down the parade.
because they're in the parade, yeah. And I guess the Public Works Director would be able to authorize people riding his.
But I think like what Michael pointed out, just waiver, some kind of waiver.
Where you, instead of referencing all of them, you may put in there that the department head may authorize the department head or the
City manager and/or department heads may authorize.
Well, one good, Brandon, the fire chief, has got small kids. If it's on his way to drop them off at school, on his way to work, does he need to put them in his personal vehicle?
No.
Or does he just put them in his fire vehicle? Now, he's not gonna be able to respond to a call with those kids in that truck, and I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of that. But if he's in his personal vehicle carrying his kids to school, he ain't gonna be able to respond in his either.
Well, and you're defeating the whole purpose of what we're looking at trying to resolve, and that's what the whole issue became. At the very beginning, it was, how do you prevent the requirement of a department head from having to go home?
Yeah.
And if they're in their personal vehicle, how do you prevent them from having to go home and exchange vehicles before they answer a call?
And I don't know that that would be an issue with Brandon. His wife may carry his kids to the
Yeah,
house.
I see.
I know he has kids, so that's the reason I brought that up.
But if he was in there and had an accident and his kids was in there, we would be responsible.
We would,
Brandon would be.
the city's insurance may be responsible. I mean, but it's just like anything else. I mean, if Brandon's in a city vehicle and hits a carload of kids, I mean, it's still a traffic accident. If there's any negligence on Brandon's behalf.
If you're driving my vehicle, Milton, and you wreck it and hurt somebody, I mean, they're gonna be looking at my insurance carrier.
Well, under my insurance, I'm covered, whether you got coverage on yours or not.
Well, they're gonna go after both of us then.
They might do that.
They'll get their money, I guarantee.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna be a issue, but I just wanna make sure that it's clarified
Yeah, I see your point.
in this. I don't want to come over here next month and have somebody sitting out there and says, hey.
Well, you can say that the department heads can authorize, authorize personnel, civilian personnel to ride in their appropriate vehicles, but the city manager will need to authorize, situations such as what you suggested, Brandon. You can have a blanket authorization.
Well, I mean, the same thing could be with Mark.
Or Mark.
If he's going to, he's on call and he's going up to eat supper in White House, and his wife's going with him,
Drop her off the side of the road and go after.
Well, he always has that opportunity. He can leave her sitting at the restaurant, he can carry her, and if he has to respond, he can always leave her at the restaurant to respond to a call. So. I've read over it 15 times. I don't see anything else in there that,
How are we gonna rewrite number 8, under restrictions and rules?
it'll be, I guess department heads will have the authority to bless who rides in those vehicles. Like Mark will be able to say, okay, it's all right for you to come ride with this police officer. Or Brandon would say it's all right for this group of kids to ride in that fire truck during the parade. Or if Michael's in his truck and has to carry somebody to Nashville with him to one of these meetings, it's all right for you to get in that truck with him. It'd be the same thing. If the way it's written right now, if you was going to a meeting with Michael in Nashville, you'd have to drive your own vehicle.
The senator.
Like if I rode up with Karen to the General Assembly when we were
Yeah.
wanting to get that.
Well, that's a good point you brought up.
Back
I'm
to
glad you
it.
brought it out.
I mean, it's better to just
So let's rewrite
have
number
it
8.
clarified.
A lot of us, especially commissioners, would go with department heads sometimes, different meetings.
Oh, yeah, I ride with Brandon places, I rode with Michael places.
Yeah, I go with Michael to see the senator, and so things like that. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that out this
And
evening.
I sometimes carpool with other planners even to
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah, it might be somebody outside the city that it's your turn to drive, or the city's turn to drive.
And I'm sure Michael takes developers or prospective builders and shows them
Yes,
property,
indeed.
so that's
That's
another,
true.
somebody else that he'll have to
And I'm
take.
sure OHM personnel have ridden in your vehicle too.
But through Karen's direction, I've had local developers ride with me as we
Well, it makes sense.
tour the city and check out sites, so.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I didn't even think about that, you're right.
That's happened with Thomas in the past,
Mhm.
when people was looking at the property. You got enough from there to rewrite that? All right. Ordinance 18-692 to amend the Millersville Code of Ordinances, Chapter 90, Article 1, Section 7, definitions, accessory building or structure, and farm-type structure. And Section 18, accessory use regulations, and Article 3, Division 2, residential districts.
Have we already done first reading on this one? I thought.
We
done
have,
first reading?
we just done it.
This horse has been beaten.
The planning and zoning are really went over this before they got their commission. I mean, it was gone over and discussed.
No changes this time, Mr. Barr?
No, sir. And so far, we've been tentatively using it. While it's not enforceable, it's been a really good guideline.
Yeah.
It helps the public
Does the public
understand.
understand it better now?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, that's
In fact, I had a phone call today that it worked very well with.
Good. That was, one of the major purposes was a better understanding from the public.
Anybody have anything? All right, item 5, discussion on changing minimum road width from 20 to 24 feet inside a subdivision. Because of the subdivision that was looking to come in, they're putting in 24-foot wide streets as a trade-off for sidewalks on something that was passed in 2005. I thought the minimum width had been changed at that point, and it hadn't. The last thing we need is 20-foot wide streets again. That's what we have over in North Point right now. And everybody knows the parking nightmare over there and the fact that you can't get vehicles up and down the street. So, Michael doesn't, I think these two have been communicating on whether it's the job of this board to change that or the planning commission.
Subdivision regulations are governed by the planning commission.
So it would be up to them to change that? Does this commission have to adopt the subdivision regulations?
The way I read it and sent it to Michael, it's within their purview, period.
What is, the current regulation is 20 feet?
Yes.
And your recommendation is to make that yield is 24?
Yeah.
Your recommendation is 24 foot?
I was talking with Michael, I don't think we need a street that's less than 24 foot wide, because if you park on both sides, you can barely get something through it then. And if it's 20, fire truck ain't gonna fit too good, unless you drag along.
And we have an ordinance also that restricts parking on the street.
We do, and the issue with that is it's.
People don't listen to
it's-
it.
Well, they don't follow that. And secondly, the enforcement is labor intensive, and it's essentially a code violation that is not a high priority, honestly.
What if it became a motor vehicle non-moving violation, a parking violation.
Your
Police
attorney
can
could
write
answer that
tickets to
better.
every single one of them, because they are all parked illegally. Not just because they're on the street, because of the way their wheels are turned, the direction that they're parked. There's something that would cause them to be parked illegally. So we'd have to have 3 police officers just to police the vehicles that are parked illegally just in Cimarron, or not Cimarron, North Point. Because they have nowhere else to park. The driveways just won't accommodate the vehicles over there. They're just not big enough. And I believe, because I was on the board at the time, in 2005, when that subdivision come through, and the trade-off was, rather than them put 20-foot roads in with a sidewalk, the trade-off was to get a wider road that was safer instead of that sidewalk. Because if we'd have pushed them to put a sidewalk in, they would have just fell back to a 20-foot wide road.
Is that South Williams Road was approved at 24 foot?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
So
then,
why do we even, okay, I see
For
your point.
future subdivisions.
Yeah, I see your point. So right now, it's at 24 foot.
right now, it's at 20.
Right now, it's at 20?
Yes.
The regulations are at 20.
Okay.
That particular subdivision has offered 24.
It's offered 24.
Yes.
Okay.
And,
Since
and
they've offered it, was accepted, and the planning commission has accepted it.
they have.
The preliminary plat. they have.
What I wanted to make sure happened is that it got changed in the subdivision regulations where the next guy coming through doesn't have a choice to whether it's gonna be
Okay.
20 or 24. It'll have to be 24.
I'm fine with that.
But now, based on what Rob's saying, that's something that'll have to go before the planning commission.
Yes, sir. And there's also a standard for a 22-foot wide road as well for collectors, whereas only arterials are required to have 24 feet right now in the subdivision regulations. So what we're talking about is going 24 feet across the board. There's also a factor that maybe in lieu of sidewalks on both sides for R4s and 5s, that maybe we just require the one side of sidewalk similarly to R1, 2, and 3 zoning districts. And that might help offset some of the development costs and make it a little more palatable to take a
one
wider
second.
road.
What about the width? And don't hit me. What about the width of the sidewalks? Right now, they're currently at what, 6 and 10 feet?
No, right now, the.
5 foot?
In our code, it's, if there's sidewalks on both sides, it's 5 feet. If there's sidewalks on one side, it's 6 feet. I
We
would
need
recommend.
6 foot wide,
It's all they've got to do with ADA and 2 wheelchairs passing.
two wheelchairs?
Yeah, 4 foot they can't
Oh, I
pass.
didn't know that.
Well, even, yeah, and if there's 4 feet, there's a standard in the ProWAG is the Department of Justice guidelines that Federal Highway is recommending states to use until it's approved at the federal level, but most states have instituted the ProWAG standards. Don't ask me what that's an acronym for. But it talks about if you do go with a reduced sidewalk of 4 feet, you need to have passing areas, say every 200 feet in length, and bottom line is, if the city accepts the sidewalk as part of the public improvements and becomes city responsibility, we have to meet ADA minimum standards.
Okay.
Which is what, 5?
Yes, sir.
Either 5 foot or 4 foot with passing
Like
lanes.
passing lanes.
I did not know.
I don't
that.
make the rules.
Well,
Did not know
I
that.
do know that all ADA stuff is,
I knew it had
in
changed.
the restaurant business, it's based on 5-foot circles
Okay.
for wheelchairs, so. But what we're talking about is minimum. The planning commission may say, hey, we want 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road, but they can't go below the minimum. That, the planning commission cannot say, to get this subdivision, you don't have to put a sidewalk at all. Would have to meet the minimums, correct?
There's some subjectivity in the subdivision regulations for the planning commission to waive or grant variances for certain standards. I'm not comfortable with that, but that's the
Yeah,
language.
but
in
that's a
there.
whole lot harder to do than not have it in there. If it says minimum 5-foot wide sidewalk on the outside of that street, then everybody's gonna pretty much look at that and say, well, that's the minimum. When a developer comes in, he's gonna say, well, I've gotta do that.
Well, the
What else
language,
are they
in-
gonna make me
well,
do?
like I mentioned, the language in the regulations allows the planning commission the liberty of granting variances. And maybe that's something that you all may want to give direction to the planning commission to roll back some of that authority to grant waivers and
Well,
what.
that's one thing, that you got 3 planning commissioners in here right now, and that's one thing that we noticed, was that there was a lot of ability of the planning commission to vary
I
requirements.
don't think they've done that in the past. I don't think they've said, all right, this is our minimum, you don't have to meet our minimum.
When was that,
Pretty much.
when was the current ordinance passed? Do you have any idea?
2002 or 2000.
Jim Lake was here.
2003?
I believe 2003.
And the South Wheel Road.
2005.
05.
So it was previously approved, the variance was previously approved?
Yes. Who approved it?
But they didn't go below any minimums, because there was not a minimum in there for sidewalks. The only minimum that was mentioned then is the minimum width of the road.
Okay.
So
do we
they
have
went
anything-
above the minimum. The planning commission just said, because you're gonna make the road 4 foot wider than the minimum, we're gonna say you don't have to put these sidewalks in.
Okay.
I mean.
Oh, so
if-
the variance was sidewalks or no sidewalks, but if you put sidewalks in, you're gonna have to have a 5-foot minimum.
Well, if it was me, I would make it say that the minimum subdivision regulations is 24 foot on the road. That is the minimum width of a road. And it has to have a minimum of 1 sidewalk on the outside that's 5 foot wide.
But our current ordinances don't require sidewalks.
They do require sidewalks. My concern is that the variance process allows the planning commission to waive some of those minimum standards and restrictions. Unless we amend the regs to have an absolute minimum, and then in some factor,
But don't you have
in
to have
some
a-
standards
don't you
and
have to
then
have-
others, you have flexibility.
Don't you have to have a requirement first and then a minimum for that requirement?
Well, there is a requirement
Yeah.
for sidewalks,
Yes.
but there is no minimum. It's one size fits all,
No, there are minimum widths of the sidewalks.
which is what?
5 feet with 2 sides, 6 feet with a single side.
Right.
But my concern is that the variance language in the regulations gives the planning commission the ability to waive pretty much anything. And
So in this particular instance, the planning commission agreed to waive the requirement for sidewalks
Because of the road.
because of the additional width of the road.
well, the minutes don't reflect the
Or
reasoning,
whatever.
they only reflect what was approved and granted as a variance. And in fact, it wasn't even granted as a variance as such, it was just reflected in the minutes that they approved it without sidewalks. I mean, even now, moving forward, I would recommend that the planning commission approve the variances as a standalone, and even a standalone vote, on top of or before the preliminary plat or final plat is approved. That way, it's clear what the planning commission was granting, or not.
If you grant it to one, but don't grant it to another one, same difference.
That's at the discretion of the planning commission, but I would caution that because
Arbitrary and capricious.
Exactly, yes.
I think that's why there needs to be a minimum in there and try to guide the board not to get below the minimum. It'd be just like if a developer come in and said, hey, your minimum road width right now is 20 feet. I want to put in a road that's 12 feet. Well, nobody in their right mind's going to even think about that. It'd have to be a one-way street. with no parking on the street.
Well, there is a way that we can address that. We can have minimum subdivision regulations that apply across the board, and then we could have a standalone, like a PUD, a planned unit development, that then you essentially write the standards for that individual development. And that might be a way for the planning commission to grant variances and some subjectivity to the minimum standards if they go through a PUD process. That's how we did it in Florida. I'm not saying that's how you should do it here, but it was a good tool to use to work around some of the challenges of what some would consider excessive restrictions and standards. So that there's a way to do it. We can take a look at that and have that conversation, or at the least, you can pretty much modify the subdivision regulations to exclude your ability to grant variances to the minimum standards. That would take it off the board.
It sounds like our planning commission, which I'm a member of, needs to have their wings clipped a little bit.
Well, why can't we have a standard? Can we not have a standard that fits all shoes that come in here?
Yeah.
One size fits all.
We do
too.
minimum.
Yeah, that's what he.
But the planning commission has the ability to let things slide.
Right now, the planning commission has so much authority.
And what gets me, 2003, they say one thing. 2 years later, they say another. So that, I have no standard. I can't.
Two separate boards.
We need some
Not
uniformity.
on this board,
Yeah.
when I'm on planning and zoning, then I run it into changes that were put in effect, and now they're changed again. And that throws me off, are we gonna do this, or are we not?
It's at the discretion of the planning commission.
I-
It's at the discretion of a majority of the planning commission.
It is, but
I think actually what we need to do is, just like what you've done here, is made this codes clear for the developers that are coming in here to understand what's going on. We need to have, the planning commission needs to have some kind of, I guess, restrictions on what they can and cannot do. But at the same time, the developers can look to see exactly what is required. And, I mean, we're not asking you to jump through hoops, but what is required of you, what to expect, and make your plans for that development according to not only what we're.
Well, we have that today, but they have the right to come in and ask for the planning commission to grant a variance.
Is there a way to put something in there that says this is the minimum requirements? It cannot be changed by any board?
Unless authorized by the city commission, majority of the city commission.
Rather than put minimum limitations, I think maybe we ought to limit what the planning commission can grant variances for.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Come
So-
up with a set of minimum requirements for a subdivision.
We already have that.
Okay.
But what can the planning commission adjust? And so maybe let's look at that.
Yeah, but that's what I'm
Buffering or
saying.
landscaping or.
The minimums are so far out there right now that that's the reason I think the planning commission wants to, that's why they have a hard time holding people to them.
There's
When
been so
it's-
many variances in the past, it's hard to hold
Yeah.
them to them.
When it's two sidewalks, one on each side, or a 6-foot sidewalk, that's like building a separate road.
I wouldn't mind having a sidewalk that's 5 foot wide on one side of the road.
Yeah, just something
mean, that makes
simple,
more sense
minimum
to me.
requirements. You know, 5-foot sidewalks on the longest side of the road, which will be the outside. 24-foot wide streets, all underground utilities,
It's already in there. Good.
and make no exceptions to it. Shenandoah is the best looking subdivision we have simply because they don't have a telephone pole.
And obviously, when you do that, you're gonna have, the people like that. It's aesthetically more pleasing, and they're going to buy into that
Well, if
property.
a tree
more.
falls, they don't lose their life.
Exactly.
Can we not
About
get
the
this,
storms.
we not get this put on our next session with planning and zoning, go over this, what you say we have?
It's going to take me a bit to prepare.
Well, that's okay, it's
but
whenever
yes,
you can.
I think we can do that, yes.
Just whenever you can. May not be the next one, that's fine. Just something that we can relate our thoughts to the city.
And I'd like to take a look at that Florida example you were talking about.
Okay, sure. That'd be great.
But you talking about that planned subdivision?
Planned
versus-
unit development or PUDs, yes.
Let's see, if everybody come in with a PUDs, wouldn't have to worry about it then.
No, we wouldn't.
They
That's what
could,
do.
It'd all be planned.
Well, for starters, PUDs are generally more expensive to create because they involve a development agreement that's very, very lengthy and intensive. Essentially, you're creating your own subdivision standards within it.
That would be above our minimum.
Yeah, but it had to be above that minimum.
Well, we could certainly do that, but this was a way that developers could take into consideration certain conditions of the site, stormwater issues and some other things, or, we have a process for smaller lots as part of the planned residential development process here. And with that, you could, possibly adjust sidewalks, you could adjust the road curves, signage, setbacks, all of that's geared just for that particular development. But it's not a standard that anybody can bring in and do a quickie subdivision plat and pass it through the planning commission on a single reading. Generally, they're more expensive because they're more intensive to review. You usually have professionals reviewing those, including engineers and the attorneys. So it takes longer and it's more expensive, which is one of the factors that dissuades developers from doing that in some cases.
Well, if this city offered an alternative as to, and so that all developers know exactly what is required of them, they will make their plans and they will adjust their budgets accordingly.
Yes.
And they can come in and they can decide whether to build or not. So that's probably the way we need to approach it. And, obviously, put out there, we would love to see your PUD anytime, but here are our minimums. Do you understand them? They say, yes, Mr. Barr, we understand them. And when it comes in front of the planning commission, when they ask for a variance, we're essentially going to say, we're sorry, but these are the minimums, we can't vary that. It's going to have 5-foot sidewalks on one side, which is the longest side, and 24-foot roadway and underground utilities.
I don't think that'd add that many restrictions.
Yeah, it's not too bad,
I don't think it'd be too bad.
but no water.
For fire hydrant.
All right. Y'all know where to go with that. Guess we'll hear from Mr. Jekyll next. Put you right next. That works for you?
Yeah.
You doing all right?
I've had better days.
It's a Monday. It's a Monday.
Yeah, well, I had to go to a visitation for a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, no.
My next door neighbor.
That is awful.
So it's not the best way to
No,
have a Monday.
it's not.
If I had to plan one out, probably that'd be it. So, city manager search. I apologize, I didn't have enough time to give you some information to look at. But I think everyone here, with the exception of Keith, has actually been through this before.
They were explaining it to me earlier, and it sounded like it was pretty good format.
So here's what as you all have been talking, I've been kind of looking at some time frame stuff. I think because of the way my schedule's working right now, what I'd like to do is to come back around and talk to you all individually, as well as the department heads over the next couple of weeks, just to get a sense for, as you go forward, what do we want to look for in terms of someone to be the next city manager? What qualities, what kinds of experience, what you would like someone to have moving forward from this point? my thought is that we perhaps kind of gear ourselves to start advertising May 1st,
Okay.
which is a Tuesday. And as I'm working through the schedule, I think maybe we leave that open till like May 25th, which basically allows about 3.5 weeks, which ought to be plenty of time if we advertise it in the right places on or about the 1st of May, which I think we can do. I really don't see a problem with that. And then that gives us some time to look at the individuals who do apply, and then come back to you as a group in June and kind of give you the top 7 or 8, hopefully, or 9, to say, here's some folks for you all to think about, and who would you like to continue in the process, and set up interviews with those, whomever you'd like to bring in for an interview. Anywhere from 2 to, hopefully 2 to 5.
So when would that take place, in June as well?
I think you could get that accomplished in maybe to the last 2 weeks of June, somewhere in there, depending on people's schedules. And I know, and I'm trying to get all of it done before we get into July, because I know that things can get pretty hairy with vacations and trying to get away for a little while.
So you're saying narrow down to how many?
It's going to depend on how many get to apply, but my hope would be somewhere between 3 and 5. And it's just a matter of how many actually wind up applying.
How many applicants were there last time? I don't know.
I'm,
How many?
Right.
5, I think 5 or 6.
well,
Well, that was.
Well, that's all that we've seen.
That was.
Well, I
We
think-
actually
I
only
think it
seen
was- I think it
3.
was closer, I think it was actually closer to 8,
Yeah.
and there were some that we said,
Yeah.
you don't want to.
That first meeting, when you came back, and
Yeah.
you said, here's how many I got, but
Yeah.
these are the ones you want to get serious
Pursue.
about looking at.
I think
Well,
it was-
unless we got 100, that'd be different, but if we got, say, 6 or 7, I'd still like to see all 6 or 7.
Sure. Well,
I mean, if you
honestly,
only had 1,
Right.
yeah, it's different, but if you got 50, that makes a difference. So if you had like, say, 6 to 10, I kind of like to see them
That's fine.
myself.
Honestly, my hope is that because of the work that you all have done in the last 3.5 years, 3 years, and given what all is going on in general in the Nashville area, you'll get a lot closer to 20 to 30 resumes.
What, and this might be something we need to talk about later, but what type of minimums do we need to give you to put into this advertisement? What particulars?
You mean in terms of like experience and education? or-
Experience, education, what the starting pay is gonna be, or a range of where the starting pay is gonna be. In your mind, what information will you need from this body
Well,
to accomplish that?
a part of that, I'm hoping there's a job description that exists that's relatively current. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, we
It's
can
all
take the-
based on the
we can
contract.
take the old one and then.
I don't think there is an old one. It's all city
Have
managers
one?
by contract.
Do you remember? See, I don't remember.
I slept a little since then.
I do.
See, that's why she's been talking to your buddy
John?
about a personnel policy, and that was one of the things I want to make sure is in the personnel policy, that our next city manager adheres to what's in the personnel policy and is not excluded from it.
Well, John wrote those, so I don't know if he wrote one for the city manager. I never saw it, but I guess we can ask him.
Well, I can ask him.
Okay.
And let's
So-
take a look
He
at
wrote the
that.
rest of them.
But I think I mean, I can look, honestly, I think, because we did an advertisement the last time
Yeah.
around. And so we had that to work with in terms of qualifications. So, I mean, I can pull that at the very minimum, because I know I still got that on my computer.
I think I have that too. I have that
Is there a
folder.
preference for understanding Tennessee law?
Yeah, I don't know that we'll want to state it that way, but in terms of evaluating individuals. And I say that only because there are just not a lot of Tennessee managers who I think would probably be willing to move from where they're at. And I know most all of them. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that.
They're happy where they're at.
I would definitely want somebody that is pretty knowledgeable about grants.
Yeah.
Well, do you have grant writers?
Well, we do, there are. I mean, I know GNRC has grant writers, and there are folks who have been city managers who have done grant writing, early in their careers, and some maybe more recently even. So at a minimum, they're going to understand the process, and they're going to understand where to go, hopefully.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not a grant writer, but they understand the process of getting a grant.
Well, should this commission look at separating that duty from the city managers and perhaps have a grant writer that is dedicated to that?
I know Anthony Holt, they have grant writers at the
Yeah.
county, and he is
One in his office.
That's all.
yeah.
He's got one, the county mayor's got a person that's full-time.
Full-time grant writer.
And he
That pays for themselves.
he has offered
I suspect so.
to assist us with his grant writer. I don't know if that's sufficient. We might want to hire on. I don't know.
Well, my point is that, grant writing, I do know this because of my previous employment.
Sure.
We received grants, and I had to dedicate one person to go take grant writing classes to really learn how to do this properly, and to actually formulate the outline to be used for receiving a grant, or most likely to be approved for a grant. And it takes a whole lot of time, and I'm just concerned that time in grant writing takes away from a city manager's other duties.
Right, they may need to review it, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I think they need to review it and look it over, and I think their expertise in grant writing adds to their qualifications as a city manager, but I think we're going to be needing, if we're going to progress, we need to have somebody dedicated, or at least maybe borrow somebody occasionally or
So
something.
the last 3 years has opened my eyes as far as the grants and the fact of what the grants that Karen was able to receive.
Yeah, I agree,
to
she
see.
did a good job.
Somewhere upwards of $3 million, and that is a lot if you base it on what her salary was. That's well over, that's 10 times what her salary was. I mean,
But I don't want the next city manager
to be overwhelmed with grants.
be overwhelmed with grant at the cost of managing the city the way it needs to be
I
managed.
agree with that. But I would want somebody that's knowledgeable
I
about it,
agree.
not necessarily the writer.
Yeah, I agree.
At least-
I would like somebody knowledgeable, but I'd like somebody else to write them, because it is time consuming. As I recall, it's very time consuming.
Michael and I had a conversation with Holly earlier. In fact, on Channel 5 this weekend, the state's getting ready to release like $3 million for dog parks. We've been talking about building a dog park, and the way they made it sound, pretty much any rehabilitating a dog park that's there or building a new one would not be that big a problem to get a $25,000 grant. It's just a matter of applying for it. And I think.
I tell you what we did when I was up in my previous job, we had never written grants, and we essentially called the governor's task force, and said, can we come and talk to you? And we went up there and sat down with them, and they told us how to write a grant for them to receive additional monies, and they ended up giving us $110,000 a year to assist. But we did sit down with them, and they went step by step by step of what they would like to have and what they expected. And the personnel that I had 3 parties there and myself, and we listened. And the young lady that ended up doing it, she took great notes. She put it together, and we got the grant, right out our first attempt. But it took a little bit of time, I will say that.
What other stuff would you need to know from the board as a whole?
Well, I think,
I know we're gonna have to come up with a salary range.
yeah, I mean, and we could, and there's a couple of ways of doing that. I mean, it would be helpful to have a range, an actual range, but that range could be just the starting range, which might not be, whatever the range is. I'm not even sure if you'll have that.
Per our, the stuff that's in place right now, it would have to be 77.
77, 8, something.
Yeah.
7,
That's the
88,
minimum.
$77,885.
That would be the minimum per our comprehensive pay plan.
Okay.
So,
So, I mean, as a thought process, I mean, you might list what the minimum starting range is, and then somewhere in the middle of that. I mean, if you know what the top end is, scale it back to something more close to the middle.
all right, well, let me ask you this, for a city our size, you deal with cities all the time,
Right.
if, let's say 78 is our minimum,
Yeah.
where would our maximum be? In your mind?
To start, you mean, or as a total?
Yes, to start.
To start? Probably about mid-80s, 85 to 84.
So we would have a minimum of 78, a medium of 82, maximum of 85. Something like that.
What's the average in Tennessee for a city our size? Do you have any idea?
I did. And I've actually had to look it up for some other of my clients, some of my other cities here recently. And here's the thing. The average salary range in the what I call the Metro Nashville area, which is 7 or 8 counties that surround Nashville, is higher than if I go towards Knoxville. Well,
If you're in Sparta?
if I'm in Sparta or Cookeville, or if I'm in Savannah, we're going to be a lot higher than those places. As a general rule, the average is going to be higher. The only place, and the only time when we get comparable salaries is when we get to Memphis, or you get to what I call the I-75 corridor along the east side of Tennessee. Everywhere else, they're going to be less as a range.
What about Athens? Do you have any advice?
Oh, he's making a lot of money.
Yeah, I figured that.
Yeah. It's actually, they just hired a new city manager 2 years ago, a young man. And he's making right at about $100,000.
They've really built up, Athens has really grown since
But wasn't that
Right.
study that we did reflect based on our
77.
population? I know, but that's what we did just 2 or 3 years ago, was
Right.
that
It's
study that
77
did that
is
range
the minimum.
based on our population and the study of the surrounding metro area. I mean, that's what that range was set for.
Right. And it's, that's why I say it's still probably a valid range, but I will tell you that that range that you have is going to be higher. You can't compare Millersville to Tullahoma.
Right.
You can't
Correct.
compare it to Lawrenceburg. You can't compare it to Savannah. Because the geography is different. Location is different. So that, it's going to make a difference.
Can you compare it to Pleasant View?
I can compare anything to Pleasant View, but why would I want to?
I was just curious.
I'd compare it more to White House. I might compare it more to, Portland. Nah, Portland's not a good, Portland's a little different dynamic.
What's the
White House.
population of Pleasant View? I just pulled it
Pleasant
up.
View, it's right at, about 5,000 right now. You see, they don't have a city manager or a city administrator in place.
Mayor and all.
I mean,
But
should
they-
they have
but at the
someone in
same-
place? Yes.
At the same time, that study was not based just on population, it was based on economics as well, and the area where it was located.
But look at
That survey was done.
Who
the
did the survey?
retail sales.
We paid a company to do it.
Look at the
Murray
re-
Holland.
look-
Burgess.
Yeah, Burns, I believe it was. But look at the retail that Pleasant View's got.
Pleasant View doesn't have that much retail right now. They're getting some, but they don't have as much as you think they do.
I go up through there about once every 2 weeks at least.
Me too. That's one of my.
I go to car shows up there all the time.
I know.
I mean, they've got-
I know where you go for them.
Yeah,
And that's where you go for them. That is, other than right next to the interstate, that's their primary retail area. That's it.
yeah.
That's it.
A lot of houses.
There's nothing.
Well, the only thing I want to
There's a lot
guard
of
against,
restaurants, businesses up there.
what I want to guard against is if we have 4 people that we get narrowed down to,
Yeah.
and 3 of them are willing to come for, say that, in the median, the 82,000. But the one we really want is at 86, is it really worth the $4,000 to say no?
That's up to you all.
That'd be
Well,
tough.
well, that's what I'm saying.
It would depend on the person. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, if we all in
And their
agreement that
experience and
the
everything.
86 has
Well-
experience and the right grants and the other one doesn't,
That's why you
And
get
here's-
paid the big bucks for being city commissioner.
Yeah.
Well,
See, and here's what I would, Mayor, here's what I would do.
Go elsewhere.
With the ad itself, okay? I think we would want to say that the starting salary range is between this number and that number. And for someone who knows our profession, they know that if that's the starting range, and this, 80, whatever it is,
Right.
85 is the top end of the starting range, they know that the top of the range is above that. So if you have someone who's, you think is very good, and he wants a little bit more than that,
We'll have to consider it.
he'll know that.
Well,
He or
that's-
she will know that.
that's what I'm asking. I don't want to put a number in that advertisement and then
Here's-
say, this board's got to stay inside that number.
Here's what well, that's why I say starting.
Yeah.
Unless you put the entire salary range in there. The only concern I have is if you put the entire range in the ad, you will get very qualified people who want to be at the very top of the range,
Okay.
coming in the door. Whatever that range, wherever that is, they are going to want that walking
So
in the
when
door.
you post the ad, you're going to say starting
starting salary.
Starting, the low end of that starting range is 78.
Yeah, if that's what it is, yeah.
It's real close to that.
Yeah, and then whatever you all want to use as the midpoint.
I just don't want to go through what
Overall.
we went through last time. I'm not gonna,
The other mistake we don't want to do is that we don't want to just say it's depending on qualifications.
I am not gonna ask an incoming city manager to go below what we advertised. I'm not gonna do it, me personally.
I'll agree with you on that. If we're gonna put it in the newspaper at 78, we need to put it at least 78 at least.
Well, and I think, you know, and you may want to expand, I don't remember if we did ICMA, the international city managers last time. I'd have to look.
I know Karen was ICMA.
And the only reason I say that is that I know to advertise in that is a little more expensive, kind of like advertising in the Tennessean, kind of cost-wise on that level, but it's actually worth it.
I want what's best for the city. I want to get the best person that we can find.
Absolutely.
And then we want to be able to advertise in some place like that ICMA, because they put out a bi-weekly newsletter with job listings. And so I do think, honestly, the way things have been improving in Millersville, and because of the work that you all have been doing, that word has gotten out that, that Millersville is progressing, and because we're also a part of the Nashville area, I think we'll get plenty of interest.
Yeah, I hear people say, well, Millersville's still not growing, but they are.
Well, that's just it.
I mean, there's multi-million-dollar companies that's moved into the city just in the last couple of years.
Well, and you don't have to look very far. I mean, you can go up the road into Greenbrier, you can go over to Coopertown, you can go over, White House is still busting out the seams. Cross Plains isn't that far away. They've had folks wanting to do developments there.
I mean, actually, one of Gilletsville's number one employers is actually located in Millersville. I'm just saying, Gilletsville advertises 31W as being a Gilletsville business, and they're not.
It's good with small mailing address.
Part of it's White House.
So I do think, and like I said, I do think getting qualified, good people, I don't think you're gonna have any problem this time around.
Good.
I really don't. And I think the timing works out pretty well.
Is that all that you'll need from us until you come back around to talk to us individually?
Yeah, and I'm gonna come and talk to you all individually here probably in a couple of weeks. I've got a stretch of time here where I'm literally starting this Wednesday. I'm on the road for almost 2 solid weeks.
How will we know when you're gonna just
I'm
have
gonna-
a day?
I'll get a hold of you all
Okay.
and set something up that works with your all schedule.
Come up here and meet with you.
It's not like I gotta go far to get here.
Yeah, if for some reason you respond to some of us, and I'm talking about me,
Yeah,
and you don't get a response back from the email,
okay.
find my number and call me.
Well, I'm
Sometimes-
sure I can.
Sometimes I don't. I'm not the
He doesn't
best
answer his
with
phone
it.
either, so don't worry.
Yes, I do.
And I do know where he lives. He lives close to us. He's not far away.
I figured somebody somewhere around here knows where he lives. That shouldn't be a problem. But I do, I mean, my guess is it's gonna take, it'll take me 3 or 4 days if I incorporate having conversations with the department heads.
Okay.
That's my big.
As part of that process.
Sounds good to me.
So, but my goal, honestly, my goal is to, hopefully, at this point, for you all to be interviewing the folks towards the end, around the end of June. I honestly think that that's a doable timeframe.
So based on what you're saying, by July, mid-July, we may be ready to hire somebody.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, if we all, work together.
Okay.
This may be a little kind of question, it's up to me, where you gonna want them to live?
I have no preference. They can live in Alaska and commute if they can get here on time.
Be here at 8 o'clock or 9?
Where they live is not important to me.
There's a helipad down here.
Number one, the city manager does not write law, nor does he or she doesn't vote on the law or the code or anything else that this board does. I could care less. If we get somebody good, I don't want to restrict them to have to live in
Yeah,
the city.
but I would say, you know, with the motor vehicle restrictions you have
They will have to
currently,
adhere to
they'd
that.
have to adhere to that.
I mean, if they want to live in Orlando, that's fine. They're just going to drive their own vehicle to work. That saves the city money. That's a vehicle we're not providing.
The whole thing is, the city manager leads us toward different things, like increases in sewer bill, trash bill, and all this other. You know, if that's the case, then if they lived in Orlando, you know, so what? They wouldn't care what our status was here.
I've never had a city manager that made up my mind for me. I mean, the votes that I've made are my votes. They're not the city manager's votes. Just because the city manager brings something on this table that says we should be increasing something 20%, that doesn't mean I have to listen to that. That's still my vote. That person does not have a vote. Matter of fact, when Karen lived in White House, everything across the board, she paid more for there than she would have if she lived here. So, to tie somebody to a restriction to live in a certain place to be a qualified person makes no sense to me.
I don't think there'll be a housing restriction, but there are motor vehicle restrictions, you know, as part of the compensation package. The city manager would be allowed to use a city vehicle, but that city manager would have to adhere to the same restrictions that we have on other department heads. So if that city manager lived, you know, in excess of 8 miles outside of the city limits, he or she would not be able to use a city vehicle.
Right.
So that cuts down on the compensation package, so.
But are we allowed to ask that question?
Which,
Would you consider moving here to the city?
yeah. Yeah, because that's not based on that's not a question based on protected class.
Yeah.
Or any other.
I think anybody that you hire, if they could find what they want right next door to City Hall, that's gonna be their preference. Don't have as far to go to work. But
Properties for sale next door.
Yeah.
Most, well, and I think, we actually talked about this the last go-around. I mean, most people in our profession, they know more often than not, that the best route for them is to be a part of the community. They know that. The only problem is, in a lot of cases, it's either what the cost of the housing is in relation to what they're getting paid, or the availability of housing in the community itself.
Well, the realtors in this area have really jacked up housing prices.
well, now, you said something about being part of the community.
Yes.
Now, I would challenge that Holly is as big a part of this community as anybody. But she lives in Portland. But she attends just about every function that we have. So where you live is not necessary
Well, I understand.
to be a part.
But there's a perception that people will have outside of these walls of where city managers should be.
Why don't we just make it a preference that they live within the city, but it's a requirement for a city vehicle?
Well, I have no problem with the preference.
The reason I brought that up, now he knows, you know, in talking to folks, in
Right.
what goes out.
I would definitely rather the city manager live here. But I don't want to pass up the best city manager
And I have to
that lives a
say,
mile outside city limits.
housing is extremely, it's more difficult now. The inventory is so low, more so than I have seen,
Yeah, that's,
and I don't know how long.
that's part of the problem.
It is just
with
insane.
Our community is that we do have a low inventory of homes.
And trust me, I've been there, I've experienced that in two of my communities that I've worked in. And that's a hard thing to deal with, from the city manager's perspective.
If you look, what about Goodlettsville? Bonnie,
So what now?
what's the inventory in the Goodlettsville?
It's low everywhere. I mean, it truly is. And if the house
But you
is
have
in.
more selection in Goodlettsville. In other words.
No, nope, nope. If the house is decent and it's priced right, it is a multiple offer situation just about every time. It doesn't matter whether you're in the
Within a day or
200
two.
range, or
Especially-
even, I mean, I've got one right now, I'm trying to find at 800 down in Franklin, and we cannot.
Especially if
Find it.
it's subdivisions near that park over there.
Oh, yeah.
There's people that won't give up their house just because of that park.
I understand why. I mean, they have that access road that parallels.
I mean, even Dr. Chopper last week, we went $11,000 over asking price and still didn't get it. Still couldn't get it.
Well, I mean, we can work, I mean, I'll work on the ad, I mean, we can work on what the advertisement needs to say, and before we send it out, I mean, I'll share it with you all to see if we need to do something different or add pieces. Because at the end of the day, this has got to be something that gets to people that you want to see here. If we don't accomplish that, then we waste a lot of time.
How often does someone get hired that is not an existing city manager, but it is working, that might be an assistant city manager somewhere?
Oh, frequently.
Frequently, yeah.
Yeah.
We interviewed the last time,
Sure
I think
did.
one or two that,
I didn't know how,
And we won out of Greenbrier.
I didn't know
Yeah.
how often that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, the city recorder in Greenbrier is probably as good an example in the sense that she does, in her role, she does a lot of the things, well, really like Bonnie.
Holly.
Holly.
We'll be Bolly.
That would
There
be a
you go.
perfect example. Let's just say that,
That'd be great, too.
let's just say that person put in an application and ended up getting hired.
Yes.
Most likely, they've already got a house in Greenbrier that they like. Why would we want to make that person move 4 miles down the road, or in some cases?
Unless she wants to.
Exactly, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right.
I don't know that I'd want to tie that to her or him being hired, is what I'm saying.
Well, that could be one of those things that you perhaps say is maybe a preference to.
Preference, but not a
As opposed to
requisite.
maybe, as opposed to saying it's a requirement.
Can you say within 12 months, a preference within 12 months?
That
I'd
would
rather
make
just-
sense.
I'd rather just leave it as a preference.
Yeah.
And then in the interview, we can talk to them, see what their intent is. I mean, if they live in Lafayette,
They want to drive, they
They
want
wanna
to get up
drive
5
from
o'clock
Lafayette.
drive home.
Well, to a degree, I suppose. I mean, there are certain situations where you want them to be able to get here.
Exactly.
I'm just being kind of neat.
You're being difficult.
Is Jay Johnson retired?
No,
Well, you see, he's not in Shelbyville.
no, he is not. He is in, Anniston, Alabama.
Is it?
Really?
He's from my
His
hometown.
family lives in there.
He was the city manager of Franklin for quite a while, and city manager of Shelbyville for quite a while.
He came within a whisker of being the city manager in Springfield.
Was that right?
They just hired one?
Well, the assistant city manager, who'd been there for 20 some odd years, got the job. That's a long story.
Anything else you need from us?
Yeah, and I mean, my hope is, and here's the thing, and I say this because of the experience that I've had in Springfield. This is a process that we want to go smoothly. I mean, you all want this to go smoothly, I think. And you want to move, when you feel you've got the right people, we need to move quickly.
I would agree.
Because the ones who are really good, I mean, that you feel are really good, trust me, they're not going to be around for very long.
Somebody else thinks it really good also.
Yes. And I had that happen in Springfield because they, all of a sudden, once I'd given them the 7 or 8 names, actually it was 10 in their case, they slowed down and they waited for about a month. And they lost 2 of the best ones. Because they were other candidates. I mean, truly, 2 of the best ones that they had to apply. You don't want that. I don't think. So, I mean, I'll encourage you to keep the process, and I'll do my best to keep the process moving forward timely. You want to get this, once we put it out there, you want to move. Kind of like the housing market. You want to move. But having said that, trust me, I want to make sure that I give you the best people. I'll do what I need to do to the best of my ability to make sure I give you the best people that we have applied. Because I don't want to deal with someone who's not good at doing this.
Makes your job easier.
Yeah, and I got enough of the difficult stuff to worry about. Okay.
Certainly appreciate your time.
But you'll be hearing from me, like I said, I literally, starting Wednesday, I'll be gone for almost a week and a half. But you'll be hearing from me somewhere in here to set up some time when I can sit down with each of you. Probably about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And since I'm real close, I can be real flexible in the time. So.
You live in Portland, White House?
It is in Hendersonville.
You and I have had this conversation.
She's gonna be the hardest one to nail down.
Yeah, he came to my open house one time.
Yeah.
She's gonna be the hard one to nail down. She's working all the time.
Just down the street from where I used to live.
Oh, you don't live there anymore?
No, we moved to Edgewood.
Well, see, he lives in Gallatin, not Hendersonville.
Well,
Yeah, he moved.
it's unincorporated, actually. Where I live. Yeah, I needed to get into that neighborhood.
Will you be at TAMCAR?
I'll be teaching on Thursday morning. So yes, I will.
I'll be there too.
I'm teaching the class you're in.
Okay.
What class are you finally taking?
Well, it's for my CMFO credits that I have to have.
Well,
and,
good. Well, then you'll like this class. It's on about why you should be doing strategic planning.
I think I've had that before.
It's changed.
Yours is gonna be
We
different.
did it before, so trust me,
You might learn something this time.
Actually, though, I will say, Gary, I signed up for the Institute this time. No offense, but I liked what the Institute was offering versus the Academy. So I'm doing the full Tuesday, half a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, half a day.
Oh, okay.
I need the hours, so I did the Institute, so, sorry. I'll see you there, though.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate
We'll
it.
talk to you soon.
All right.
Have a safe trip and
Yes.
condolences to your family and neighbors.
They're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is discussion and review of city judge resumes. Anybody have anything?
Well, yeah, I read about where Ivory come up with that, Russell Edwards.
The what?
Russell Edwards.
I know that Mark Palmer had mentioned there were a couple people that they thought were going to apply. I didn't get any resumes. I emailed Greg Smith again today, since this was my first day back from vacation, that I had hoped we would get more resumes in the mail. I haven't heard back from him, so we only have these 4 to work with. Well, I would think that you want to go ahead and schedule these
I
for
would like
interviews.
to, I'd like to interview this Johnson.
Mhm.
Well, I know absolutely nothing about lawyers, so, I
We just
know
interview
even
all
less
of them.
about.
Well, I'm going to tell you my impression just by looking at these resumes, and Mr. Johnson has, in my opinion, a good cross-section of interest. He's worked in law enforcement as probation officer. He's seen both sides of the law and is currently obviously working in criminal law on the defense side. So he's seen both sides of the issues. He's worked as a probation officer, for a year. He's worked as a border patrolman for 2 years. And he's worked in the DA's office for a considerable length of time. And now he's working as a defense attorney. So I like the idea that he has seen both sides of the issues, and he's probably, a lot of things, he will probably not be bamboozled by the different stories, but, that's personality, but I just like that. Mr. Edwards, nothing against him. I think he has great qualifications also. I think both of those have good qualifications. I think Mr. Edwards has been on the criminal defense side primarily, juvenile defense, and like most of lawyers in this area, he's more a plaintiff's attorney and a defense attorney, which is fine, but, I question is he stuck in that pigeonhole, I guess? Which, as far as that's concerned, Mr. Wheeler has probably been a plaintiff's attorney and defense attorney all your life, haven't you? Or you've been primarily administrative attorney?
I used to do a ton of insurance defense work, civil.
Insurance, the way you've seen that side. I just think it's good that you have lawyers that see both sides of the same coin. But Mr. Edwards is highly qualified, I will say that. I think they all are. Mr. Wilson, both Mr. Wilson, in my opinion, they're both highly qualified, highly educated, licensed both in Kentucky and Tennessee. This is a situation where are they going to move closer to this area? I do have a problem with the fact that they're both coming from the same law firm. And as Mr. Wheeler pointed out, we're going to be appointing one judge, not a law firm. And the way the law currently sits is that if one lawyer cannot make it, or if the judge cannot make it here, there has to be another judge appointed that has general sessions jurisdiction, or if no judge is available, then you can pick from the attorneys. In the old way, the attorneys that are in the courtroom elect one of the attorneys to sit as judge. That concerns me.
That would concern me greatly.
These, they're highly qualified people, both of them are. But primarily, one of them's worked as assistant county attorney, and they both clerked. One is a city attorney up in, depends on what you want, but I think we should probably talk to all of them.
I think
I'll
we're
ask
talking
for-
to all of them.
I'll ask those questions because that's the concern I have, is what happened.
The main question that I have is I want to make sure that we get a judge that will work with our police department.
Yeah.
If they go out and write citations, legal citations, if the judge throws them all out, then
See, here's another point that they need to realize also, is, this is my opinion, is the way I ran my business back when I was city attorney, or city judge at Hendersonville. If I had anything that came to my private practice that involved the city of Hendersonville, I recused myself from it. Now, I don't know how Mr. Wheeler feels, but I think as city judge, you need to do that. Now, not all city judges do that. I knew that at least one of the city judges that came after me at Hendersonville did not do that. So, but, that's what I'm looking at. I don't know if that's going to happen, but especially if they involve Millersville Police Department, city judge shouldn't be taking on a case that involves testimony from the Millersville Police Department, or, in my opinion, even the city of Millersville.
I would still like to
Wait a
see,
minute. What do you mean by that?
Exactly what I said. I think it's conflict.
if what?
If, I don't think a private attorney, and this is my opinion, there is no basis, but this is the way I lived my life, just so that y'all know. But if I was city judge in the city of Millersville, I would not take any case that involved the city of Millersville as a party to that complaint,
As a private attorney?
as a private attorney.
Okay,
correct.
yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
I didn't,
You threw
No.
me off there a little bit.
yeah, no, and I
I'm
would
not a
like,
lawyer.
I'd like for Rob to be here when they're being interviewed, and Mark, our police chief. I think he needs to be here.
Good, that's a good point.
I would agree.
So we
Now-
have y'all's input as well.
Question, I know the rules in relationship to city managers, but if we hire a judge and for whatever reason, 3 months down the road, he's just not jiving with our city or our police department, whatever, we do not have to give him any length of time that he's employed, correct?
serve at the will of the commission.
Just want to make sure.
I've looked at people who've come before me that I never represented, but somehow or other, we haven't been on the same side, and it may not even, it wasn't a lawsuit. And I just asked them, do you want another judge to hear this case?
Yeah, I've done that too, yeah. And yeah, you're a city judge in Millersville. You do that to make sure their rights are guaranteed, and at the same token, that you do not have that, I get look of impropriety.
Right. And I sure don't want them coming back
Yeah.
saying
That,
yada, yada.
exactly. But I do know that been a few city judges that didn't do that. I disagreed with it.
When are we planning on interviewing this week?
That's what I need you to tell me, so we can schedule it.
Whenever you want to start.
I'm good at any date and time. Whatever works for the rest of us.
On a rainy day next week.
We can do it at
nobody
4
can
o'clock
get
in the
out.
morning. I don't care.
So any day next week, probably, the way
Are
it's
you
been
gonna do
raining.
them all at once? Line them up, or what?
How long should it take to interview one? An hour?
30, 45 minutes.
30 minutes.
Well, I mean, there's only 3, ain't there?
And then you can bring one back in for a second
Two
interview.
are coming from Clarksville.
I would do them together, then I wouldn't put one in front and one to back.
Apparently, they're kin to each other.
I think they're brothers.
They're brothers.
Oh, really?
And I think there's a sister
They're in
too.
the
I
same
think there's
law firm.
3,
I saw
yeah.
that, but they're
Yeah.
brothers?
Yeah,
I think if they
I think there's a
realize that
sister
there's,
too, yeah.
I think if they realize that there's only one that could possibly get hired,
Yeah.
that
I'm
they may.
I'm just concerned
back
that
down.
one of them may be in depositions one afternoon and say, hey, bro, can you go down to Millersville
Well,
and handle that?
Now we know they can't do that.
Well, that's gonna happen.
Well, unless they're twins, I guess you would never know.
We can get a magic marker.
Surely not.
Any date's fine with me. It does not matter to me at all. You'll tell me when to be here and I'll come.
Tim, you probably need to check with your watch first.
It'll be all right.
Just give me a little notice.
Any particular day?
I am best on either a Monday or Tuesday.
That's why she'll only be an hour late.
Hey, it's just my job.
You do. I'm best on Monday.
I know.
Second, third Tuesdays are not good.
So Monday, the 9th.
I don't know. That's next
That's
month.
next Monday, well, planning commission's got a meeting with me about that. Not planning,
No.
but
That's Tuesday, the 10th.
Park Department has a meeting in here.
What time would be best for you guys?
I don't know. Do you want to do it during
Why
office
don't
hours?
you just check, yeah, I can do it. I'm flexible.
If it's 4, if we started at 12, it'd be done by 3 or 4.
Shouldn't
Did
take
Mr.
long.
Wheeler make it?
I left my phone out there. I'll turn this back on and see.
And just, I guess this would be pending whether or not they can get it
Right.
themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, we gotta coordinate their schedule.
Yeah.
so we can
We
shoot
get
for
by
the
the first
9th.
round. Throwing out the first day, I'll buy you one.
Okay.
Can't do it then, we can move it to the next meeting.
And 16. So I'll just contact them and see if it's gonna be hard for all 4.
All you have to do is let me know what day and what time.
Well, I'll reach out to all of them first, and I'll just tell them the 9th around noon, and we'll go from there.
Does any of y'all have any problem with noon? The 9th?
Noon? Okay, I'll
The 1?
try.
What's better for
Does
you?
1
The problem
o'clock work
is,
better?
it's not that, it's just I've got clients that are coming into town, and I don't know when they're at certain times.
Is Monday a
when
bad
they're-
day because they come in on the weekends, or, I mean, is there a better day of the week?
I just don't know, because I've got some relocations right now that I'm working with, and they're just at the spur of the moment. They tell me within 2 days, I want to be there, I want to see this number of houses. I can't judge that, but I just know that normally it's on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's usually the days, but,
Just tell them your phone died and you missed your call.
and this one of it,
I tell them I'm guilty.
Well, what did you say that house was selling for down in Franklin?
800.
Yeah, I can't make that.
Yeah, exactly.
Working on one in Brentwood right now, the lady gives 600 for it.
Shoot,
She's already spent over 300 remodeling it.
Well, the houses that you showed me at $500,000, it used to go for $120,000.
Oh, yeah. Back when Jim Ray bought that place over there where you live, that original house that he lived in up there before Ricky built the house you live in, they built your neighbor's house. They spent $110,000. That was a mansion when they built that house, $100,000 house. You can't buy a 1,100 square foot house for $100,000 anymore. I mean, now, a mansion, $700,000-800,000.
No, it's hard.
Depends on where you're at.
A basic house down in Franklin is about 650 to 800, seriously.
But you move that house up here, it becomes a mansion.
Well, this is true. Very true.
I'm thinking that we could schedule them, though, 30 minutes apart, if all 4 of them can make it.
I think so.
That's fine with me, I don't really have any questions, I just want to listen.
I don't know how you interview a judge.
I can't even do water.
I don't know what you asked them.
I don't
We
do
got
that.
two
What was you
right
ask-
here.
what
It
was
would
you
be
asked when you
fantastic
was
to have
hired?
to interview.
Why do you want this job?
Okay, well, I can ask that.
That's all I can ask.
Because it ain't to pay.
No, they-
And where do you want to drive from Clarksville?
Yeah, that's,
Unless you're just looking to put it on your resume, it doesn't make any sense to me.
that's part of it.
That's it. That's it. Because after all is said and done, the you know, it was.
It's a thankless
it was
job.
It was, well, it was Judge Bell, and it's Judge Wheeler. I got $50 fine jurisdiction.
It's not that big of a deal.
I would much rather have somebody a little bit more simple, like John, Mr. Lowe, Judge Lowe, that was here forever.
My opinion was that I think a city judge should be somebody like Mr. Wheeler, like Curtis Lincoln, that has 20, 30 years of experience and is slowing down his practice a little bit.
You look at
But-
Judge Lowe, he made it through a lot of police chiefs.
Yeah, and still wants to be involved in the law some way.
Well, but I also talked to Greg, and he said part of it too is because you are a judge, you get a lot of fees that you get a lot of fees you don't have to pay because you're part of being a judge. They're waived because you are a judge in the state of Tennessee. There are some of those.
They don't, no.
Not worth.
I will tell you this, there is.
I didn't have any back
There are
There-
some.
But there's one perk. And my law library is provided by the Tennessee Municipal Judges Commission.
I think that's what.
See, that when I was city judge, we didn't have that opportunity.
Well, that only happened within the last,
Now, that, I would love to have had that.
Okay, so that's what it is. And there was something there that
Y'all
was
talking
saying.
Greek again.
well, my law library is right there. And the cost of that is provided not by the city. It's provided by the Tennessee Municipal Judges Association, which didn't exist for
So
the
if you-
first 18 years I was done.
If you weren't a judge, you would have to provide that to yourself.
Yeah.
And what would that cost be?
Well, at least $500 a month.
Yeah, well, that's pretty significant when you add that onto the old judge's fee there. That
Yeah.
makes a little more sense. That might be a little bit better drive down from Clarksville.
Yeah. And if they, I don't know, if they got it in that firm, it may, I don't know.
I would hope they have it in that firm.
Well, I know they do, but I mean, if one of them were to become, that the whole firm could use that?
Well, it said
I
in
doubt
there-
that's allowable.
Said one
I
of
don't
them
think
that was
that's
in there
allowed.
that had powers to make calls on settlements up to 250,000.
Mediator.
I don't know whether it's mediator.
Mediator's unlimited, you either bring them together, or you don't.
Well, his was up to 250,000. To tell a certain city whether to settle or
They've been
not.
granted that authority. Do they represent that city?
There was a couple of them that listed as city attorneys.
Yeah,
Well,
That has to be where it was coming from.
yeah.
so he might ought to get that provided somewhere else.
I doubt it.
So you gonna try for
Plus,
the
the
month?
other, I maybe have shared this with, they were constantly encouraging us to go to Reno, which is the Center for Judicial Training. If you're elected to the circuit bench in Sumner or any other county, you'll probably eventually wind up going out there because it's like a week or 10 days long and it's intense. They put you through the mill out there. And they were encouraging municipal judges to go out there, and I'm thinking, again, I got $50 fine jurisdiction for these things. You know, well, guess what? You know why they were encouraging? Because that Tennessee Municipal Judges Association receives $1 for every traffic ticket written in Tennessee.
That's a
See, we
lot.
didn't have that. I didn't realize that.
Wow.
That's
I'd like
changed.
to have died when I heard that. Well, no wonder why not send me to Beijing, you know, I mean.
The only thing we got, well, we had the litigation tax. Litigation tax back then was only $13.50.
You know, that stays local. This is
It's
a
still
dollar that goes to
$13.75.
that association.
$13.75.
And they, oh yeah, you need to go out there. And I'm thinking, well, they're burning money up there.
What you're
I got it at
referring
the wrong
to
time.
is he's a hearing officer with the Kentucky Claims Commission, and he conducted hearings to determine whether state agencies are negligent. he could recommend to the Kentucky Claims Commission whether to pay negligence claims up to $250,000.
So maybe it's
So he was a
provided by
hearing
that.
officer. That's one of the ones from Clarksville, something in Kentucky.
But it's a Kentucky thing.
Yeah.
That was a full-time job, wasn't it?
No, well, it says December 16 to present, so I guess he's still doing it.
The 9th,
We're gonna shoot for the 9th at 12 o'clock, and I'll just let you know.
and if not, the 16th?
Yeah.
Same time?
Okay, we can write that.
So,
All right, general discussion. Anybody?
I've got one thing. I came to get my packet, and they have changed the codes in the doors, and I wasn't notified. So if that lady hadn't been sitting out there in the dispatch office out there, I would have never got in. So, I don't know who changed the codes, but I think when they change the codes, they ought to at least notify you.
did anybody get notified?
When I walked in,
Okay.
I knew it because I
Yeah.
asked you had the code
Right.
been changed, but no,
Yeah.
I didn't get
And I
notified.
apologize for that. We changed, had the locks rekeyed and the codes changed on the doors. So I apologize for that.
I mean, that's just standard.
Do you know what it
Yes.
well, don't they,
She told me.
is? Okay.
I'm just saying, I just thought maybe we should have been notified. I mean, I don't know when it was changed. I mean,
It was Friday,
okay.
Yeah. Well, it
the
was.
23rd.
Yes,
The
it was
date
done
of
the
the
day.
meeting
The day
was
the
done that
city manager
morning, yeah.
resigned.
Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Anybody
I
have any-
instructed them to change it, but I didn't think about letting y'all know. We didn't let our own employees know.
Yeah, I think Deb
Well,
got,
one you did, because you got in.
I know, but Bethany came and she didn't know. Jerry didn't know.
Deb got in somewhere and then couldn't get out.
that's right.
Y'all have anything?
Move that we adjourn.
No, hold
Oh,
on.
wait a minute.
No.
okay.
I had mentioned to the mayor today, I had already registered and the city's already paid for me to attend the TAMCAR conference in Franklin this year, and that's the, what I need for my CMFO credits, and I registered for a Tuesday afternoon class, and then it's Wednesday, Thursday, and half a day Friday. The Tuesday is April 17th, which is the day of our commission meeting. And if it's okay, I can cancel it, or I can still attend it, but I wouldn't be back for the meeting. And if I can get the packets and everything in there, and it should be what's on this agenda here, shouldn't be anything new. So if it's okay, I'd still like to attend the session that we've already paid for.
I don't see a
So-
problem.
Have you been training somebody to step in?
Well, Amy is attending the same conference as me, because she's doing the certified municipal clerk.
You talking about for minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, normally Amy would do it, but she's in the same conference as me. So if she doesn't come down on Tuesday, she'll do the minutes. If not, I'm gonna ask Deborah to do it.
Okay.
We'll have someone here to do the minutes. It's just, I won't be here for the meeting because it's a 1 to 5 o'clock session on Tuesday afternoon.
You're gonna have to rush back to get here by 5:30.
I would, and that's coming from Franklin, Tennessee, so
You won't
Yeah,
I would
mean,
make it.
The regular meeting is usually mostly
Right.
voting to start.
If-
We'll have one public hearing, and that will be this ordinance 18692, and it'll be on for second reading.
Holly, I didn't have a chance to mention to you today, but I'd like to have a rezoning ordinance on the agenda as well for a first reading.
Okay,
I finally received, over the weekend, a legal description for the park,
okay.
for the parcel, so I was gonna write that to tomorrow. Thought I'd get to it today.
What property?
The Augustino parcel up, that's straddles between Cycle and Wilson Lane. It's the one that has the county line that kind of meanders through it, and
Will
the
it be
zoning
on
line,
the,
you follow the county line.
Has it been to the
It's like
planning
3
commission?
different-
Yeah.
Will
It's
it-
already been to planning
Yeah.
commission.
Okay.
We just didn't have a legal description to take it for an ordinance. The planning commission approved it by graphic, and parcel number, but only by graphic approximately. But for the ordinance, it has to have the legal description per our zoning code.
So it's already been approved by the planning commission?
Yes, sir.
So it'll go for first reading at the April meeting, go to a work session, and then public hearing
Okay.
and second at the May meeting.
If you get in a jam on Deborah or anybody, I attend Madison Suburban Utility District every month. I take their minutes, so I can take your minutes if you need to.
Okay.
Well, Michelle could too. I just figured I'd check with Deborah first, or maybe see if Michelle was available. Regardless, we'll have it covered. So. Okay.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Yes, sir.
You good?
Yes, basically, it's an extra sheet of paper that you had explained to you.
Okay, so that's fine. And so what did they, we're gonna go ahead with this, we have to vote on this? and-
We'll have to vote on it, but she's gonna go ahead.
Yeah,